This is TWiT.
So in my youth, Jason, I was taught not to fear the Reaper, but maybe it is time that I did, especially considering the amount of IoT devices I have running in my house right now. Joining us to talk about this sneaky botnet that already infected millions of networks is Steve Gibson from GRC and Security Now. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Hey guys, great to be with you this afternoon.
Good to see you, Steve.
So what is Reaper? Is it Halloween hype, or is it something that I ought to really be scared of?
Well, I don't know that you should be scared of it, although it could create a problem for the internet. It's been a few days more than 1 year since the Mirai botnet was found to be responsible for creating a huge internet disruption by using its 100,000 IoT devices, largely cameras and digital video recorders. It used those to attack a major DNS provider, Dyn DNS. And by holding that DNS provider off of the internet through a distributed denial of service attack for many hours, the DNS information, that the mapping between domain names and IP addresses, had a chance to drain out of where it was cached by other DNS servers, and they were unable to refresh the information from the master Dyn DNS server. So all over the world, people stopped being able to reach websites which were users of Dyn DNS. That was just over a year ago. We're almost at the anniversary. Well, we're just past the anniversary. That was 100,000 internet-connected devices. This new net, which was first detected by two different security firms a week ago, is known by different names because they each gave it their own name. One is IoT Reaper, and the other is IoTroop, IoTroop. Today, that botnet is more than 2 million devices.
Wow.
So a year ago, Mirai, with 100,000, was able to push Dyn DNS off the net and cause unreachability globally for websites that relied on Dyn DNS's services. This network is 20 times bigger now and is growing at 10,000 new devices per day. It has more potential growth because the Mirai botnet a year ago was guessing simple administrative logons which were exposed by cameras and DVRs, and also trying the default passwords. This new network is actively exploiting previously known defects that have never been patched, some as many as 4 years old. And these exist in D-Link, Netgear, Linksys, other popular routers, in several cameras, in one flavor of DVR. And there's also been attacks against Synology, NAS, and Linux servers. So this thing is very aggressive. In one case, when a new defect appeared on October 8th, just this recent October 8th, that the knowledge of that defect was incorporated into the botnet within 2 days. So whoever is behind this, and no one knows who's behind it, they are actively watching the industry. They are incorporating the latest knowledge of defects, and this thing is growing hugely. It incorporates it has been captured and reverse engineered, and there are more than 100 open DNS servers known to it. That is, in its code, it appears to be prepared to launch probably the most powerful, massive denial of service attack we have ever experienced, because you're able to send a query to a DNS server pretending to come from somewhere else. And so the DNS server's response, which is larger than the query you sent out goes to that other location. It's called the DNS amplification attack, because a little bit of bandwidth in the query is magnified, amplified into a larger response, which you're able then to spoof your IP and cause to go to another destination. This botnet that is 2 million already, 20 times the size of Mirai and growing rapidly, is set to do something. It hasn't done anything. No one knows what it's going to do. But, I mean, this is the most potent weapon that has yet been assembled. And so something's going to happen. We don't know what.
Making me really nervous, Steve. Okay, so we have the benefit of if it's any sort of benefit at all, of knowing this ahead of time. Does that give? I mean, is there any hope that there will be measures as a result of this knowledge to help soften the blow, or is this just bigger than all that?
I'm not in the loop to know what might be going on behind the scenes. Certainly, it's gotten a lot of press. You would imagine that people at the Department of Homeland Security in the U.S. and maybe elsewhere are getting engaged, because the picture I've painted is one that is understood. That is the fact that this is 20 times bigger than Mirai, which nuked a major DNS provider long enough to cause global outages for specific websites. So this has to be at someone's attention. The way to intercept this is to get to its command and control. That is, somewhere these 2 million bots are going to some knowable servers to get instructions. Yet the author of this apparently is very sophisticated. This botnet is growing so fast, he or she or they are adding new command and control systems, because it's so big it needs more command and control just in order to manage the scale of this thing. So I don't know whether they'll be able to neuter it before it does something. I would imagine they're being careful, because if they start to neuter it and the person in control notices that he's beginning to lose some access, that might cause them to launch an attack. So, I mean, it's a potent weapon, which is now living in, I believe it was 60% of enterprises in the U.S. have equipment which this thing has infected. So at the moment, it's only being used, we presume, for attacking other things on the internet. But it means that every single enterprise and apparently it's 60% of them, actually are compromised, and so that infection could turn around and look into their network rather than just being used to blast data back out onto the public internet. I mean, this is the big problem with the so-called Internet of Things devices. We're all used to now having our apps updated and our phones updated. I mean, and Windows 10, my God, that's drama every time it updates. So the notion of constant updates is already filtered into the fabric of the way we operate with our PCs and our mobile devices. But it hasn't gotten there with light bulbs and refrigerators and routers. Yeah, yes, you can check for a firmware update, but it just doesn't do it by itself. Normally, it's something you have to go do. So as a consequence, there's hundreds of millions of devices with known vulnerabilities not being patched that are just ripe for this kind of remote takeover. And now we're seeing these chickens coming home to roost.
So the Checkpoint website has a list of the devices that you can check to see if you have one. And so I expected to see the Amazon Echo or, the Hue Lights Hub, but they're not like IoT devices, right? I mean, the list, it's like the Synology system that you were talking about, Linksys routers. It doesn't seem that long of a list, really. I mean, what should home users, is there anything to look at, or is the real problem coming from the enterprise?
In every case, the vulnerabilities that are being exploited are known and have been patched. That is, the patches are available, but nobody, those victims are not patching. So the absolute takeaway advice is, if you keep your stuff current, if you go check your router's admin page and click on the check for update, and if it says there's one available, update it. If there says no, you're current, you're fine, because this thing is taking advantage of publicly known, previously fixed problems. It's just that I imagine listeners of this podcast and my Security Now podcast, we're probably all current, but we're not everybody.
So you've mentioned the level of sophistication here, and obviously the scale of it is something that we haven't seen. Do you think that points to the possibility of this being the workings of like a nation state or something, some big effort like that?
I don't think so. I could do this if I wanted to, and I'm not a nation state. There are a lot of smart guys out there and girls who could do this. It's just, there is this weird thing where for all these decades we had viruses, and they never, until recently when we had crypto malware happen, but that's after 20 years of viruses. They just they just lived to infect things and to infect other things. They didn't really seem to be doing much damage. And similarly, this kind of technology, the capability to do this is long-standing. It's just no one has. Well, until now.
Mm-hmm. Well,
so it takes the proper engineering, but it doesn't take genius or huge dollars. Someone in their basement could be in control of this and could have just whittled it away, genned it up last weekend.
So Brian Krebs calls this the calm before the storm, and Checkpoint says this is a cyber hurricane, and you described it sort of like it's gathering up. Is it time for us to evacuate? Do we just air gap everything?
Just maybe get postage stamps.
Okay. Okay. Postage stamps. Good advice. Steve, thank you so much. As always, it is a kind of pleasure talking to you. A very specific pleasure talking to you.
Right. Fasten your seatbelt.
Steve Gibson, of course, the creator of SpinRite and Shields Up, and the host of Security Now on the TWiT network, which you can subscribe to at twit.tv/SN. Thank you so much for joining us, Steve.
Thanks, guys. My pleasure.
Thank you.